Hey Amarillo, I'm Skylar Gallup and you're listening to Hey Amarillo. It's the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. We record each week at the beautiful offices of Rosenbach Contractors. They're experts in high-end design and construction, creating stunning, functional spaces through both new builds and remodels. Today's guest is Ricky Treon. Ricky is the director of publishing for Amarillo-based Blue Handle Publishing. Yeah, Amarillo has a publishing house. That's cool, right? So we talk about that. We talk about some cool inner workings of the process of getting a book from someone's head onto the pages, hopefully, of a bookstore shelf. Ricky also has had some really cool previous experiences. He's a former journalist, which you know I love, who had front row seats to some really foundational shifts in media, and we explore that some too. He's also an author himself. He's done some acting. It's a really fun conversation. Here's Ricky. Ricky Treon, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Glad to. Let's start at the beginning. Where are you from? What was your childhood like? What was young Ricky Treon?
Well, we moved around a lot. My dad was in construction whenever I was born, so we all just kind of picked up and moved with him. So I was born in Arizona, lived there for a few months of my life and haven't really been back very much, but we moved all over. I lived in South Central LA, Watts, if I remember right, Maine, upstate New York, all over the place. But really, we kind of settled down with a more permanent home in Stinnett.
Oh.
So north of here. That's where I went to like 7th and 8th grade and high school. And, my parents still live there, so that's still home base. But yeah, that, a lot of different schools. I think one time I counted them up and it was somewhere around 12 different schools from the time I was, kindergarten all the way up until high school. And we did move away from Stinnett once for not quite a year. We moved down to Florida, and Dad worked down there. And then we told him, well, we're moving back. Hope you join us. Like, not really, but yeah, we moved, and then he followed us, and eventually I went to work at the then Diamond Shamrock, now Valero refinery in Sunray, and retired there. I don't know, 2 years ago-ish, something like that. So
nice. He
and Mom were retired, and they like to travel.
Oh, lovely. Was it hard for you as a child moving around that much, or is it just what you were used to, or what was that like?
I guess it was what I was used to. I will say that, I only remember one or two people from before we moved to Stinnett. So my lifelong friends kind of start there whenever I was in middle school. But I mean, it was, no real hardships or anything like that. But yeah, just a lot of moving. I suppose my dog, lady, she was a kind of like a cow dog, like a herding dog, collie mix, and she was kind of the constant for a long time.
Your best friend.
She was, and then she, whenever I went to college at UT, came home for one, I want to say Christmas break, and she had just passed. So she was great. She ended up going blind toward the end of her life, so we couldn't really move the furniture and stuff. But no, she was great.
Bless her heart. We are blessed with some good ones, those dogs.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you went to UT.
Yes.
What did you study? What was your plan when you left Stinnett for Austin?
Journalism is what I studied, and I went down there, for that. I was targeting journalism since, probably like sophomore year of high school. Went to high school at West Texas in Stinnett, and they started a high school newspaper, an online high school newspaper, believe it or not, in the late 90s,
cool.
Early 2000s. Not necessarily for me, but sort of, because I showed an interest in that through UIL, the academic competitions. And so we started that online way back when, and ended up, as I recall, winning some kind of regional award or something of that nature. And I really enjoyed it. So I targeted journalism schools, and we didn't get any out-of-state sort of financial help. So UT, one of the best in the country anyway, but definitely the best in the state at the time. So went down there for that. I wanted to be the next Rick Riley. When he was still writing for Sports Illustrated before he went to ESPN, the magazine, because he had a sort of a back page column for Sports Illustrated. And
so you were into sports journalism?
Yes. No,
cool.
I went down there for that. That was actually a concentration you could get within the print journalism So I went that track. Graduated in 4 years. Did an internship with the Fort Worth Star Telegram, and then ended up
Nice.
getting my first job postgraduate, not post well, after graduating. My first
Sure.
job after graduating at the Star Telegram, covering sports of all kinds. So
That is not a bad first job in journalism.
no, not at all. Yeah, definitely covered some Rangers and Cowboys, and like my, in addition to high school sports, obviously, pro rodeo was like I had like a weekly column that was sort of my beat, and that was interesting. I grew up, all over the place, but we were always pretty rural whenever we moved to a new place, and so that fit right in. Like I knew I'd been to rodeos. I'd tried to catch the greased pig whenever I was a kid. Never did any mutton busting, but no, that was awesome. And then just couldn't make it work financially. And the second time the paper had a round of layoffs, and I was not full time. I was what they called full time part time, which meant that they paid me a pretty good salary, I suppose you might call it, without any benefits, enough to get by. And you could do some freelancing here or there if it wasn't a major conflict. But after the second round of layoffs, whenever I was there for like less than a year, I said, okay, I think I need to find somewhere else to be. So moved back home to Stinnett, got a job covering sports at the Globe News here, and then kind of went on that wild ride until I was the top guy in the newsroom. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
How long were you, like, how many years cumulative between the Fort Worth Star Telegram and here at the Globe?
I think it's right around 10 years.
Nice.
And then actually after the Globe News got bought by Gatehouse and there was a massive round of layoffs, a former dean of journalism, I believe, is what she ended up being, Fluffy Cash at UT. She reached out and said, hey, saw what happened at the Globe News, because it kind of made statewide news when we got bought out in the layoffs. We have a managing editor position open at the Kerrville Daily Times, my old paper, one of her favorites. Would you like to go interview? And I said, oh yes, that would be go live down in the Hill Country, keep the sort of this equivalent job that I was doing. And, it was still kind of a, not family owned, but a small regional chain, unlike, Gatehouse. So felt safer. So I ended up going down there until I signed my first book deal, and ended up liking writing fiction more than working in news. So I left Kerrville and, was a writer, and then whatever else I needed to do to pay the bills, which my parents were happy for, because watching me grind it out at the sort of the end of the newspapers, they they were worried for me. And then I had friends who were like, you just kind of quit your whole profession that you got your degree in and spent all this time building. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared for you. So it was a lot of different reactions, but it ended up being great. I ended up feeling better about where I was after leaving.
Yeah, I think media is changing daily, and I think for people that worked in newspaper, or still there are still some people that work in newspaper, kind of watching that traditional local newspaper structure fold was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. I don't hardly look at the front page of the paper anymore. I just, it kind of, it still hurts sometimes. I still watch journalism movies and TV shows and try to almost remember the good old days. And I'm 40 years old, and it sounds weird to be saying that, but it's, that kind of stuff changed so fast. Whenever I got into college, it was a thriving business. You could graduate from UT. People who graduated 2 or 3 years before me, and even in that specialized sports kind of program, would graduate and go on to work for New York Times or one of the major papers in Texas or the Southwest, and make a real salary and cover the beats and do all the stuff. And then within 2 or 3 years, by the time I graduated, it was 2008, and the journalism business was cratering, and the entire economy cratered. I mean, it was kind of a wild time to be trying to figure all that stuff out. So to get that full-time, part-time job down at the Star Telegram and still be doing really cool stuff and getting great experience and be able to live, if not live super comfy, but I mean it was
do what you love and pay your bills, right?
Exactly.
We should all be so lucky.
So
Yeah.
it was I felt really lucky, and I knew that it was because I had put in the work and was good at what I did. Because I knew a lot of folks who didn't have that passion and drive for journalism and for the sports, and a lot of them, if they had the means, went and got law degrees because it's a lot of equivalent stuff,
Yeah.
equivalent skill sets to being a lawyer and to being a journalist. So
Yeah.
a lot of them went and did that, and then there were a few of us. I think a couple of them might still be doing sports websites now. Obviously,
Right. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really so much. A lot of newspapers, they're cutting sports entirely, and of course cutting book reviews, which is also impacting my current stuff. But yeah, it was it's kind of wild to have had a front row seat to how quickly all that changed.
Kind of an industry collapsing in a
Yeah.
way. So you mentioned you figured out that you liked writing.
Yeah.
Tell me about author Rick.
Well, I kind of dabbled in fiction, trying to write fiction for a long time, and I've got all kinds of chapter ones and scattered all around. At 20 years old, what on earth are you even going to write about? And then the same thing could be said at around 35, I guess, whenever I got real serious about it. But that was around the time whenever Amazon started its Prime Reads, where if you were subscribed to Amazon Prime, which I was, you could get a book or two free on your Kindle, and they had an app for your phone, so you didn't have to go buy a Kindle. So I did that and got back into reading crime fiction, which I got that from my mother. She's a huge crime fiction and Stephen King sort of horror adjacent to literary horror fan.
Cool.
And I read a few books, and they really impacted me. And I said, I would love to be able to do that, make people feel the way I just felt finishing that book. And so I got a little more serious about it. I researched how to teach yourself how to write a novel, basically broke down the books and figured out why I liked them, and studied a little bit on craft, as much as I could with that, spending a ton of money on craft books and stuff like that. And then, just started writing some samples and figuring out a story, and really worked on that first novel for several years.
And is this why you're working down in Kerrville?
So started while I was at the Globe News, and then got a little more serious. I actually left the Globe News for a bit. I was an online editor there. I'm not sure if you were around. We attempted to launch AGN TV. We were going to try to compete with the local television news stations through our own video platform, and got way burnt out because I ended up writing shotgun for that whole process. And after we got it launched, I left and did oil pipeline valve and automation sales, which paid better and was kind of a 9 to 5. So I had more time to write and work on that stuff on the side. So I did a lot more there. Ended up going back to the newspaper because I sort of figured out that a 9 to 5 that had no creative juices wasn't going to sustain me through 40 hours a week even. So I went back as sort of a city editor at the Globe News. And so kept working and kept chipping away. And then, whenever I was down in Kerrville and said, okay, journalism really is not bouncing back, got more serious, finished it, sent it out, and got a publishing deal through a small press very similar to the one that I run now at Blue Handle. So,
what's your first book title? What is it? Tell me about it.
Deep Background. So it's about a journalist, but he's not necessarily a good one. He kind of gets disgraced and has to move back home, something I was familiar with, right what you know. And he teams up with his ex-girlfriend, and they try to figure out, who's been killing people in their small town. It's not a very good long line. I definitely am good at helping other people get really short, good elevator pitches for their books. I have never quite got a great handle on mine. So, which that's every author. Talking about our own books is like, no, why would I want to talk about my own book? I wrote it. Go read it, please. There's a back cover description that my publisher helped me come up with. You can go read that. But no, it's disgraced journalist goes home and teams up with his ex-girlfriend. They have a contentious,
Nice.
it didn't
Yes.
end well. And I learned some things from publishing that one. One, I learned that I had to figure out where and how to land a book because I wanted to just keep writing and keep telling the story. And I write short and then have to go in and fill in. So I felt like the book was too short, so I added more on the end. Because the most consistent feedback I got was it ended and then you just kept going and didn't need to add more to the end of the story. But no, I enjoyed writing it. And like I said, okay, I enjoy this process, this type of writing, and I can go, I've done all kinds of stuff to pay the bills and help support my writing habit. So, but yeah, that was my first book. It was Deep Background.
And how many books do you have published now?
I have 4 books and a novella.
Nice.
So five titles overall, and a collection of short stories that I self-published.
Nice. Over how many years have you?
Let's see. My debut came out. I want to say it actually came out in like December or November of 2018.
Okay.
But
Cool.
I'm a member of the 2019 International Thriller Writers Debut Class because they kind of had a weird schedule back then. So if you published at the very end of 2018, you were grandfathered into the 2019
Okay.
class. I would have to look up the exact date my debut published. But yeah, basically since then, and then COVID happened, so I had a lot of time to write.
Yeah, there you go.
So I published a few more books in there, and then went to work for Blue Handle, and have been most of my creative book stuff has been geared toward that, and I wrote short stories for the Texas High Plains Writers. They have an anthology that comes out every year that helps support their nonprofit. But we, the authors, keep the rights to those stories, so I kind of repackaged them and put them out through my own LLC that I have with a partner, Jordan Garrett, called Bomb City Entertainment. So we released an early version of her book that we are going to republish, and then we released my collection of short stories.
Nice. Okay, so intro, Blue Handle.
Blue Handle Publishing is a small publisher that operates in the traditional model, which is to say that we are not hybrid and the authors don't pay us. We pay the authors royalties. We put out a fee,
And it's local,
it's local.
which is so cool.
Well, we appreciate that. Yeah, me, my fiance Amber Guffey is the director of operations. I'm the director of publishing, and then Charles D'Amico is the founder and the publisher. We all live here in town, so it's local in that respect. We don't have offices because the entire process up until it actually gets physically printed can all be done online.
Totally.
So Amber and we work from home, and Charles works from wherever he happens to be standing at that moment. He's a very busy man. He's also a Jimmy John's franchisee. So that's how he makes the bulk of his money. And he was writing and self-published a couple of his books and realized that this was something that can be replicated for other authors, and he wanted to do that. So he started a business because he has started businesses, and he's an entrepreneur. So I started out as the editorial director. I was going to edit his books and then find other books to publish and edit those, and did that for a while. And then his title was vice president at that time. She moved on, and so I took her spot, and we called it director of publishing. And so, now I'm scouting and acquiring books and doing the developmental work. And then Amber does the bulk of the line editing and the copy editing, and then we proof the pages. And we actually just released a book on Saturday, but I think it released officially the Tuesday before that because books release on Tuesdays. So we're publishing books and trying to make sure that we get really great stories out there because the Big Five has had to consolidate, and it's harder than ever to get published with a major publisher. And so there is room for smaller publishers like us to put out great stories and make sure that those folks who are writing those great stories can get their books out there and go to events and help fill in where the major conglomerates are kind of edging more and more authors out, which, that's the business model. So, no shade to them, but we're just glad that we can help fill in the gaps a little bit.
Yeah. I'm interested in how you get a book published through a publisher. Like if I'm just Skylar with a story in her head that puts it down on paper and think I have something cool, right? My friends like it. How does that go from Skylar, the published author? Not by the way of self-publishing. Like,
Yeah.
So if you guys published me, what's that process look like?
What I would always recommend to folks is if you want to be a full-time writer or have it significantly contribute to your income, you want to try to go with the bigger publishers because they can pay advances. They can pay sometimes big advances, and they have the distribution in place to get you in a lot of bookstores and sell a lot of copies. That's not something we currently have.
Okay.
And so to do that, you get a literary agent who then tries to sell your book to the editors, the acquiring editors at those major publishers. And there's the big five, they call them. There's 5 or 6 that are kind of big corporate. Amazon is only owned by Amazon, but I mean, it's being considered one of those publishers now. But they all have different imprints for their different genres, and so you can publish with a publisher that is part of like a big 5 tree. So there's a lot of
like Penguin and like Random House, right? Are those?
Yeah, Penguin Random House is one big
Probably
publisher.
owned by conglomerates,
And
of course.
by I think a German conglomerate, and then there's
Or
Penguin,
like
and then
Disney
there's
or
Random
something.
House. Yeah, and then there's a bunch of little branches below them. But anyway, like
Cool.
if you publish with one of them, you publish with the big 5. They all have that same distribution system. They all offer escalating advances as you go. But the agent is the one who kind of gets you into that. Some people call them a gatekeeper. You can have a positive or a negative connotation to that word if you want. But they are your entry into that world because otherwise they would get too many open submissions to even handle and how they choose books. So the agents are kind of helping them to do that based on what they know about what kind of books sell, their own personal taste. Not that different from what I do, every year for Blue Handle now. But you have to query them, send them an email, and you can Google how to write a book query email, and there's kind of a standardish formula, but you pitch the book to them in a short email and give them a short bio, and if they like your premise, they will hopefully want to read your book. Some of them say, and also send 10 sample pages to me, or send a synopsis so I can get a feel for what the whole story is, not just the teaser, because what you send an agent is sort of what you would read on the back cover or the inside flap of a book, just kind of getting you excited to read it. Because like the process is get an agent excited to read the book, and so then they read maybe the first 10 pages that you sent them or whatever sample they want. They really like that, get them excited to read the whole thing. They read the whole thing, and you have them. They want to help you sell your book. You do not pay the agent. They enter commission if your book sells and you make any money from it. So they're working for free until they sell the book. So that's their incentive to actually sell your book to the publishers. And so that agent takes and repackages the information you sold them on, and they repackage it for the editors they think they can sell the book to. And the acquiring editor will buy or not buy, and then the agent negotiates in advance, or whatever royalties are going to be. They help negotiate the contract, and then they get 10 or 15% is standard for what they get on your advance and any royalties if you earn out. So an advance is an advance on royalties. That's how much the publisher sort of thinks the book is going to end up selling. Their goal in that equation, generally speaking, is to have you earn exactly that amount of royalties and no more than that, not pay any more royalties after, and then your goal as the author is to earn out and start collecting royalties on top of the advance on the royalties that they gave you. And, hopefully your great grandkids are still, earning royalties or however long the copyright lasts. So anyway, that's sort of that model. And that's if you go with the agent and want a major publisher.
What do you guys do?
We take unsolicited submissions. You go to our website. There's a submit button. You fill out a form. You can send us the whole thing. It does have to be all fully written. That's, if you're writing fiction, that's one thing I tell people is the book has to be all the way written, and you have to make it as good as you can, or some people even hire outside editors to help them get it ready for submission. You don't have to, but if you are not a professional writer, like I was a journalist, so I was confident I could edit it and get it ready to go. So didn't have to do that. But if you are, say, a stockbroker who's going to write, a thriller about, a stockbroker who gets in some kind of shenanigans, and so writing is not something you do every day, and it's not
Craft,
your
yeah.
forte, he might hire an outside editor to get it, to read and to look like and be polished like, a manuscript to be sent out. You have to have it all the way done. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that you can finish the book, because that's the hardest thing. And I tell people whenever they say, I want to write a book, what's the first thing I do? I'm like, you have to write it, which sounds reductive. But no, if you can't get to the end and write a whole, 70 to 120,000 words and wrap up a story in a satisfactory way, that's step one. It's learning how to do that and doing that. And then after that, there's all the other stuff I've been talking about. But the difference between, major publishers and us, one of the main differences is that we do take unsolicited submissions. And actually, we have yet to publish a book that was sent to us by an agent. We've gotten agented submissions for sure, and the ones that did not have an agent have just been better in our experience. And I say that to say to folks that whether or not you get an agent, whether or not you get 100 rejections and no agent representation, does not really have as much of a bearing on the quality of your work as you think. It's about marketplace and tastes and what gets you. And of course, for us, there's three of us. There's me, Amber, and Charles, and we all have to kind of agree to publish a book. So if I love it, but Charles and Amber don't, then,
Sure.
But
do y'all specialize in any, do y'all have like a market or a genre or?
We do not currently. We definitely publish a lot of thrillers, but that's a major genre anyway, and a lot of books can be called that, no matter what the story actually is.
Okay.
And then we have published middle grade and young adult. So we definitely
What is middle grade?
middle grade.
Oh, like
for
elementary.
middle
like
schoolers.
junior high.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then
so middle grade and young adult. I gotcha.
And so we don't specialize in any of those things. We specialize in the stories that move us. The book that we have coming out in May is a young adult drama, I guess you would say. It's just a young adult work of fiction. And at the end I was crying, and so I was like, okay, well that tells me that this story moved me. Let me pass it on to the other two and see if it's something we can publish. And we are finishing up the cover. Amber might be doing that as we're recording right now. We've got the blurbs, and we are basically ready to upload and ready for pre-order, and it'll be our second release of the year with a couple more coming. We try to release about a book a quarter, and then sometimes, like this will be a hardcover that we're about to release, and then we'll release it in paperback probably at some point early next year, later this year, depending on the market and sales, and if we think we can get a cool event at a bigger bookstore, because the paperbacks are intended to sell more because they are at a lower price point.
Yeah.
So, and mass market isn't really a thing, especially not for smaller ones like us. The mass market's starting to go away and being replaced fully by ebooks. So, we also do that. The ebooks don't sell as well for the young adult and middle grade markets because, the adults are the ones with the money who buy the books, not always the teenagers, and definitely not the middle schoolers.
Sure.
So we have an adult thriller that we're going to release this fall, and that one, will make a much bigger ebook push along with the hardcover and then eventually the paperback. So we try to do and mimic everything that the major publishers do, and our books are of that same quality. For sure, in the editorial, I feel like our books stack up against anyone else's. We love really nice covers, so hopefully readers cannot tell whether or not it's us or Penguin Random House, publishing the book. Other than it may not be in stock in their store, they may have to order it from their store and have it shipped to them, because that's our primary distribution is internet sales. We work to get our books into libraries and physical stores, but we do not have the distribution systems that the major publishers have, which is, obviously we would have much greater sales if we could just be in stock and have people browsing in a bookstore
It's the same reason that one would choose to, eat at Sharky's rather than Chipotle, or, shop at Mackie Black's rather than, Dillard's, as
Right.
you make the choice to, because
Exactly.
you believe in where you're spending your money.
Yeah, and like I said, I think our stories stack up against anybody's. So that's what we're proud of. And I'm also, we've gotten great feedback from our authors. Our authors enjoy working with us, as far as I can tell, and giving them a great experience is one of my top priorities. And that's, I think, one of the ways why some authors go with us when they can go with other publishers who maybe are also independent but are bigger, and they could possibly make more money, at least more money initially and quicker. Our goal, and we tell our authors this before any contracts are signed, is like, we want our books have legs. We can't make you rich now. So if you wrote a book to get rich, we are not your folks. And we tell people that sometimes.
Yeah.
Because some people do look at writing a book as an opportunity to, it's not a get rich quick scheme by any means, but I mean, and it's like, we're not your folks for that. You need to get a literary agent.
Yeah.
And I can, we can answer questions. We give free advice. We also, if we're not the publisher for you and you want to self-publish, or you want to get your book ready for a different publisher, Amber and I will edit your book and stuff like that for a private services fee. We call that our book Puma, is what we call that, and that's totally separate.
Yeah.
Which it's harder to explain now because there's so many hybrid publishers out there that will, if you pay us $10,000, we'll make your book look like a book, and we'll put it on Amazon, and we'll also take half of your royalties on top of that. And it'll be out there, and people can buy it or not buy it, but we've already got you $10,000, so it's all
That's
good.
interesting.
So Blue Handle, the money only flows from us to you. You get royalties on every sale, no matter what, revenue split. And then with Book Puma, it's straight services. What I like to tell people, especially around here, is it's like we're like plumbers. You have a problem with your pipes, we go in and fix them, and then if you sell the house, you don't then owe us 10% of the house sale because we fixed your pipes. We did a service, you paid us for us, and
Seems clean.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, if you pay us for Book Puma services, we will not then publish you through Blue Handle, because that would be a conflict. And then obviously, if you publish through Blue Handle, we're not charging you for our editing service, as you're not paying us with your credit card for those services like somebody else might be if they're going to self-publish.
Yeah.
But it's, that landscape has become very muddied, and that happened over the last 20 years or so, because the technology to self-publish is very easy now. And some folks, whenever they submit to us, we tell them, I don't think we can add enough value to what you're doing, because maybe they've self-published before. And it's like, it's not fair to you for us to take part of your royalties when you can self-publish and do the work yourself. If you would like our editorial expertise, you can pay us for those. We'll send you a quote, and if we're cheaper than your other guy, or you want to work with us on this book instead of your last editor, we would love to. But I try to be really fair and say, we're not going to give you enough value add for us to take your royalties. And then, sometimes somebody comes to us and they want to self-publish, and they want our services. And this happened with the author whose book we just released, her second book, A.J. Whitney. She was like, I'm thinking about self-publishing, and she sent us the book, and I read like 3 or 4 chapters. I read her sample and said, oh, okay, you can get somebody to publish your book, and that could be us, so let me not do this work. Let me not have you pay me right now.
Right.
And let me send me your full book, and I'm going to send it to my other 2 colleagues, and I'm going to finish it, and we're going to see if we just would like to publish it. But this is a book that we would be interested in. So don't pay me, and don't, cancel us out of your process.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, we're going to publish her whole trilogy. And like I said, we just got back from Kansas City to launch book 2, and book 3 is on my computer waiting for me to be read and go over developmental edits. So it can work that way. And then if somebody, like I said, if they submit to us and we're not going to publish, I let them know, if you're interested in self-publishing, we can send you a quote for editorial services. But once that happens, like I said, we are not the publisher for you, but if you want to self-publish, we can help you out. And, we have several clients who come back to us for their books because they enjoy our services. So if we can help get more great stories into the world, however that looks, that's our goal, because, we love great storytelling so much.
This episode is sponsored by the Amarillo Art Institute at Arts in the Sunset. If you haven't been, this place is an amazing center for Amarillo's vibrant art scene. They have monthly events, including the First Friday Art Walk, which showcases the artists they have in residence, and there are some incredibly talented people with all sorts of wares and mediums there. They also offer classes for children and adults in things such as glass blowing, weaving, and pottery. All of it really is just so cool. Check them out on Facebook. That's Arts in the Sunset. So Amarillo has some cool bookstores. What type of relationship do you guys have with some of our cool, Burrowing Owl and some of the cool bookstores in town?
Yeah, Burrowing Owl, they stock some of our books, and they do a lot of local events and like book conventions. And so sometimes they will buy our books to have on display, and then they keep some for their store. But I've known Dallas at Burrowing Owl for a long time. Whenever I was author Ricky, before I did the Blue Handle thing, so she's hosted me for events for forever. So we've had a good working relationship for, I guess, since late 2018. In fact, I think it was November 2018 because I did my first book signing with Dallas at her old Canyon store, so not the new one. And I was sort of I think about it as I was the opening act for Jody Thomas and Linda Brody, who were going to sign that day too. It was like a Thanksgiving weekend sort of a thing. And I think my book was going to actually be released the Tuesday after that, but we were doing it early. And so I signed, and then they came up to the table right behind me. So that was my first book signing. That was a really cool experience. So I remember that now, yeah. So ever since then, Dallas and I have had a really good working relationship. I've talked with the folks at Chapter House on 6th, and we, Amber and I live in San Jacinto, so we stop by there just as patrons. We have some books that might be right for them, but we haven't had any books stocked there just yet.
Sure.
But like I said, like getting our books in bookstores is awesome. But in terms of my job of driving sales, a lot of that has to be done, with internet retail on bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, believe it or not. If you have a Walmart account, you can, buy our books and have it shipped to you. But yeah, that's a primary driver of our book sales, and also our, whenever we do sell to bookstores, we can do that wholesale. So that's also, but a lot of that is determined by events. So we host events, and then they buy the books for the event, and they keep a few in stock. And then our authors keep their own stock because wherever they are, anywhere from Nashville, Kansas City, Washington D.C., they go to events around them.
Yeah,
and
places and stuff. Sure.
And they buy it wholesale and keep all those profits. So some of them, if they're entrepreneurial, if that's how their brain works, and if they like doing that, running their own small business, they can do that and make way more money per copy than just the royalty split that we would do. And we, Blue Handle, go to trade shows, and we go to local stuff. I believe there's one called Ridiculous. Read.
Cute.
And it's they're going to have their second event in July, and so we're going to be there, and we'll take our own stock that we have and sell the books there. And of course, if we're buying wholesale and selling it list or a little discount, because when you go to a festival, you always give a little discount to incentivize. Right. And then obviously that's more for us and more for the authors because of the revenue split. So we try to be active in doing that and making sure that we're getting those books sold that way also.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of different kind of like venues and revenue streams and things to sell some books.
Yeah, and so for independent publishers, you do all of that as a way to get your books out there. If you're the big five, you are working hard. You have a sales team, outside salesmen who go to the Barnes & Noble here and all around the country and sell them on stocking books and try to set up an author tour for the author to go to the big bookstores and get a big crowd and sell there and have them stock your books. And so that's their distribution model, and that's how they sell their thousands of books there. And then we just have the different, more independent hustle culture sort of way to do it. Now I'm always looking to try to get us because a lot of those big five and larger places will distribute small presses like us you apply and you have to show a really good sales track record and stuff like that. So,
That's cool.
so we're building up toward that, and we're increasing our sales and our visibility year over year, month over month, year over year. So,
Nice.
if I do that well enough, then we'll get to a point where we'll be able to, really take off in that space too. But as you know, and as a lot of your listeners will know, building a business takes time and it takes dedication, and it is, not easy. It's not a get rich quick scheme. So we're in it for the long haul. I think Charles started self-publishing his books in 2020, and then in 2021 we started publishing other folks. So we've been at this for long enough. We're sticking around. So now it's time to really kind of start pushing the gas pedal down, and that's my job as director of publishing.
That's really cool. And, and in the meantime, or regardless of where Blue Handle ends up going, what you guys are doing is keeping local publishing alive, telling people's good stories.
And that was,
which I dig.
yeah, that was always our goal. And Amarillo is a very literary city. Maybe you kind of think of it as a cow town, maybe, and it is that for sure. But I'm never going to do the math because it's too good of a fact to check out. But we probably have as many bestsellers per capita who live here in Amarillo and Bushland, believe it or not, than anywhere in the country.
Really?
Yeah. And there's Amazon bestsellers, but also like New York Times and USA Today and all those kind of bestsellers too. Jody Thomas is a big one, and and some live here and move away, but you have Linda Brody, and then Taylor Moore, and then Linda Castillo lives out near Bushland. She just had another New York Times best-selling book this year. She writes one a year, and so it's like there's
just casual writes one New York Times bestseller a year.
Yeah, she and she.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So we have a lot of bestsellers here, and a lot of independent writers. We have one of the oldest writing clubs in the United States, in the High Plains Writers, formerly the Panhandle Professional Writers. It's been around for more than 100 years. I know because I was the president of that organization during their centennial, helped put that together. So it's a very literary community. And so it had a small press for a long time, probably before I was born, or I definitely wasn't living here at the time. And then now we have it here, so people are excited that Amarillo, a city that has such a literary culture, does have a local press. Although we don't exist just to publish local authors. Like I said, our authors are from everywhere. And actually, Charles and Jordan Reed, who lives in Sanford, up near Stinnett, he actually works for my old school district, PSP CISD, are the local authors that we really have. And then we told a local story with Clara Sneed, and before we turned to Dustin, because this is Texas, and I know she's been on the podcast, so she's not a local author necessarily, but told a very local story. And so she was excited that there was a publisher here too, which is why some of that ended up working out the way it did. And so people are excited. We're excited. Every once in a while, people say, "Hey, I can drop by your office," and we have to say, "Well, funny you should mention that. We keep our overhead low by not actually having an office. We all just work from home, but we all do live here in town. So we're definitely an Amarillo-based small press."
So I'm thinking about kind of like the through line of your experience as we've talked about it today. Being kind of like the small guy against some of these kind of the David against Goliath.
It's hilarious you say that. I enjoy watching dramatizations and documentaries about big corporations, companies falling, like your WeWork and stuff like that, or like the forming of those companies and how they kind of got really big and then finally their CEOs fell, or stuff like that. And I was talking with Amber about that. I'm like, I don't really know why. And she's like, really? You don't know why you enjoy that? And I'm like, looking at her all confused. She's like, because your entire existence is about sticking it to the man from the time you were a reporter, because that's, holding centers of power to account is kind of the major thing that journalists do. And so it's like, oh, and I just hadn't realized that sort of about myself. But, she knows me so well that it was obvious to her, and so it was funny to her that it was not obvious to me why I enjoyed those stories being told and learning about those stories. So yeah, it's I never thought of that as being a major part of my personality, but obviously it is, and obviously folks who talk to me can see that about myself. So.
Is that a driving factor for you now that you do think about it? Or is it just like, well, I don't know, this is just where I found out that I could publish some books? Or is it like, no, I care deeply about this. I want small business. I want local business
I do.
Fight against capital greed and
Well,
all of that
and
stuff.
so I always knew that I preferred small businesses, and it's like the Globe News starting out, it was owned by by Morris, a smaller chain, basically in the South. And then whenever I left, I said I worked for a sales company. It was for a small local business in Canyon, actually. It was called DA Crystal Sales, and he retired and sold to a different company. But yeah, it's like 5 or 6 of us, small business right there operating in Canyon. And we were a multi-million-dollar company, and I was a head of operations by the time I left. So small business there, and then I do prefer working for small businesses. Technically through Bomb City, I own a small business, it's an LLC. So yes, that is definitely important to me. I just didn't realize, I guess, how it impacted like my entire worldview and even the stories I liked consuming. You know what I mean? But small businesses and local stuff has always been important to me. And yeah, I've always centers of power, be it financial or political. I've always had an eye for finding out ways that they're not being on the up and up. Like we joked whenever I was a reporter for the Daily Texan at UT. We always joked that how incredible would it be to cause a big shakeup in the NCAA or like really do something on a major scale like that, which did not end up doing. There were a lot of arrests at UT at the time, so I got a lot of practice writing crime stories because players kept getting arrested, and there was stuff like that. And Mac Brown ended up being on his way out and retiring shortly after I left. So, but I think that without a robust media, that kind of stuff goes by the wayside, and I think there is a direct correlation between the downfall of, and I'm not talking about cable news. That's a whole different animal.
Yeah,
that's
strong,
not but local journalism, daily newspaper journalism, and kind of where we are now. No matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, most of us, I don't think, agree that we are in a better place than we were 20 years ago in this country for whatever reason is important to you. And I think that the downfall of the traditional journalism that I studied and was practicing, I think there is a direct correlation.
I always said about when I worked in local TV, I really wish I would have come up in the 80s, in like the golden age. And I think to your point, there's a direct correlation in trust and engagement and education on events. And, the reporters that are out here, working for the Amarillo Tribune today know more about our community than
Yeah, for sure.
Next Star TV.
Oh, absolutely.
Just bought out,
And it's interesting. The first time I realized that trust in the media in general had really eroded is I was covering something, and you're posting about it on Facebook or whatever. And for my personal profile, I shared the story I wrote, and somebody was like, "Oh, I'd heard about this, and I didn't think it was true. But if you, Ricky, said it, then I believe it now, because not because the Globe News, not because whoever,
Totally.
but they trusted me because they knew me,
Yes.
and knew I had integrity and that I would not lie about something, but they had no trust in the institution, and I was like, that's wild to me, because I always thought, to me, the institution was the thing that was super grounded, and you could have bad actors. Because we've all Stephen Glass and those guys, fabulists. I mean, they've existed, so they were the bad apples, but the institution was the thing. And then it shifted to where the person, you could trust them no matter who they were writing for. And so now that's why a lot of the best journalism is actually kind of on Substack and on local websites like the Amarillo Tribune or the Texas Tribune on a statewide level. Because you trust the people and the integrity of the journalists more than the institution, and that's the exact opposite of the way it was when I was growing up. So,
Yeah.
It was a really interesting shift to be a part of.
Yeah, totally. And it all goes back to storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Indeed, your work still.
Yeah, and it's it's funny how you can tell bigger universal truths through fiction sometimes, and so I think a lot of stories do that, and I think that's some of the reason why they can move us so much. And of course, and sometimes that's harkening back to a different time or an experience that is not one of your own that moves you. And that's why, I believe, and they say that it's true, that if you read widely, then you are a more empathetic person because you have placed yourself into another's shoes and seen how that experience can be lived. And that and traveling outside of the United States, I think, are two of the best ways to really round yourself as a person. And not everyone can do the traveling, and I've only done it in very small amounts. But libraries are free, and we can all go and we can all step into another person's shoes. And I'm so glad that I started doing that from a young age, and I think that that's an important part of being in a society. I think is being able to empathize with folks who are not in your situation, who do not look like you, who have never lived like you do.
Does your marketing feel like a shot in the dark? Are your social media posts getting lost in the scroll? Unlock your business's potential with SKP Creative. They know your audience and design posts that reflect your brand and drive real engagement. From scroll-stopping social media content to powerful traditional marketing, graphic design, and website development, SKP Creative covers it all. Are you ready to elevate your feed and turn your marketing into a success story? Visit skpcreative.com today. I'm back with Ricky Treon. Ricky, this is the part of the show we call 8 Straight. I've got 8 fast ones for you.
All right.
When you think of Amarillo 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
I hope that it is still a great home base because for me, that's what it is. You cannot beat the cost of living here, and there's enough to do on a day-to-day basis. But traveling like we just did, went to Kansas City, and that's why we like going to the book launches. In addition to supporting our authors, which is the number one goal, Amber and I get to take we take the kids on a little vacation to some stuff that maybe doesn't exist here. But part of that is because the cost of living is so low that we want to make this our home base. So I hope that it continues to be that way, and I hope that the schools keep growing proportionally because I grew up in smaller schools with smaller class sizes, so I know how important that can be. So, building the new schools to accommodate all the new growth, down in the southwest part of town, the Helium Road, out there, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's booming. When was the last time you went to PDC?
We went there toward the end of last year. Amber's mother came to town, and we all loaded up and took the kids and spent a day out there at the canyon. I do not go enough, and I don't go to Wildcat Bluff enough, and I really should. It's just sometimes you get wrapped up in life, but yeah, we went at the end of last year, and it was wonderful.
Perfect. How old are your kids?
10 and 13, and they should remain that age by the time this comes out. So, but yeah, no, it's and they are absolutely wonderful, and I've known them my whole life because Amber and I have been friends. She used to work at the Globe News, so I've known them just about literally their whole lives. So
Amber's family and your kids.
Mm-hmm.
That works both ways.
Yeah.
Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Simultaneously, too much road construction and too many bad roads. Somehow one's not fixing the other, which I'm sure that's true of any city. But yeah, every once in a while during construction season, driving around gets very annoying, and yet somehow the potholes also jostle me around a lot. So,
so very lucky.
Yeah. But overall, our roads and our infrastructure is really good. I don't mean that to be super negative. It's just,
no, but objectively speaking, there's a lot of construction around here right now.
I feel like that's true. Yeah,
it's out here. And what do we not have enough of?
That's a tough one because I enjoy living here, and I don't feel like I want for anything except for since I've become a father, and since I live with the boys now, enough varied stuff for them to do during the summer. I feel like you have a few mainstays that you can go to, but sometimes it's hard to keep them entertained other than looking at a screen, which is not my favorite. But I understand I grew up in a very different time than our kids are now. So, and I don't know what the answer is. I have no opinions to share on what we need to help that. But if in general, if there's anything Amarillo, I would say maybe more inexpensive or free things for the kids to do after school and during the summer. And I'm sure there are options that we don't know about and haven't explored, but it seems like in bigger metropolitan areas, there seems to be more of that maybe than here. But that's not a super informed opinion because I have not been a father for all 13 of our oldest years. So
Yeah. What's your favorite local building?
the Barfield. And I know it's a cliche answer. I'm sure everyone says that.
Well,
but
it's a beautiful building.
they did a beautiful job redoing it, but it's also very literary. There are books everywhere. Even out in the speakeasy, the book area opens up, and there's a whole area in the back. We've done Charles's book launches there. We had our centennial celebration for the High Plains Riders down in that Paramount Recreation Room, the speakeasy down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do love that building for all the cliche reasons and because it is so book oriented, and we have our books in their little free libraries and kind of around, like there's some Blue Handle titles we made sure to donate to where the building is as local as possible since we are a local publisher.
Nice, that's cool to know. What is your favorite local restaurant?
And this is one.
We're coming on lunchtime, so
Yeah. I'm not a foodie. I prefer and have actually been doing a good job, losing weight with Amber's cooking. So
Nice.
like home cooking is
That's
definitely what I would prefer. But Amarillo's restaurant scene in general is very good.
Yeah.
If there's one place where we beat the bigger metropolitan areas, it would be our restaurants.
I agree.
It's believe it or not, Amber and I a lot of times default to going to the Chili's on Western. we really like going there, which I of the local restaurants I enjoy Public House there on Bell. Eaten there several times. I used to live closer to it, and that was a really good one. But I live in San Jacinto, and so the stuff on 6th is really good. I'm looking forward to, there's a new Mexican restaurant that translates into something like Master Taco Maker. The name's escaping me, but they got the facade all done, and we've been patiently waiting for it to open. It's really near us.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. I was unaware.
Hopefully it opens up this year. Looks like it could be really nice.
Nice. Okay, so you have 4 hours to spend in Amarillo with someone who's not been here. What are you doing?
So I think you have to take them to Cadillac Ranch. You ignore the Stanley Marsh of it all, and I was working at the newspaper when it all went down, so but it's still a piece of classic Americana that's right here. So you go there, Paladaro Canyon. If you have 4 hours, you can spend a little time there, get to it and
you
back.
Can get out there.
I'm going to throw the Big Texan in there because, again, it's, everybody knows about the eat the 72-ounce steak, and a lot of them know that, have seen, like, footage of the tiger eating the steak out there.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and then sometimes, or maybe it's just a story I heard, I don't know, but I can see it in my brain. And then sometimes celebrities stop there because, if they're on their way east or west, they'll stop there to get food because everybody knows it, and, the Lee brothers have always made sure that people stop there, and sometimes they would tip off the newspaper. I don't know if they still do, but
That's fun. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I know that because whenever I first started working in the sports department, they let the newsroom know that Dennis Rodman was there. So they said, "Oh, let someone from sports go," and we sent one of our even younger than me people who are going to get a real kick out of it.
How fun.
I suppose I would give them, if they'd never been here before and we only had 4 hours, I would make sure that they visited the touristy stuff, because if they went home and people are like, "Oh, did you go to the Big Texan?" They'll be like, "No," So you have to make sure.
No, this guy I was with wouldn't let me.
Yeah. Oh, back to the restaurant Blue Sky. I really enjoy eating there too. So
that is
I'll
burger.
throw them in there. Yeah, and their fries. I love natural cut fries anyway, but their fries.
Do you do the regular or the sweet potato?
I enjoy both, but it's hard to beat the regular.
Yeah, nice. Okay, what do you think people get wrong about Amarillo?
I do think that they get wrong that it is so very Western and based around cattle and farming and stuff, which, like I said, it is all of those things, but we also have a thriving literary scene, as I said, a thriving arts scene. We are getting more into the TV and film, which is an area we didn't even talk about today because that wasn't the focus. But I'm in that scene too, and we have the Greater Amarillo Film Commission now. Sherman is great. I'm not sure when the last time he's been on the podcast, but he's doing a lot of great stuff and would have a lot to talk about. We have the Amarillo Film Festival, which I attended. So that scene, the Arts in the Sunset alone, just as a venue, is wonderful. So I think people don't realize that we do have all of those things, and living near 6th, I get to kind of be immersed in that every day and see that. So I think that if you don't know that, it's not something that is super apparent.
Yeah. And yet, if you do, you're like, how does everybody not know this?
Like you drive around.
Yeah, if you know about it,
so many, all the beautiful murals from the Hoodoo
Yes.
Festival and just the blank spaces. So
Totally.
there's all of that, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's wonderful. But I do think that probably the general population isn't as aware of it.
Yeah, I agree. I like to conclude my episodes by offering my guests the opportunity to endorse something. So a thing to try, to know, to do, to get into about our area. What would you endorse?
Our bookstores, I think, is what I would like to, because Burrowing Owl, we've talked about them. There's the Amarillo shop and the Canyon shop, Chapter House, which I mentioned right there on 6th. That's a wonderful bookstore, and it carries a wide selection, and it focuses on sort of underprivileged voices and that sort of thing. And I think that is an absolutely wonderful thing to do, especially in the literary space where it is very homogenized. So getting those voices out there is important. And then we also have like Antiques is also right there on 6th.
It's a really cool store.
And there's several other bookstores right there. So I would encourage folks to look that up and explore all the different places. And I definitely do throw the libraries in there. I have my library card. I wish I could get there more often, but I work from home and I'm surrounded by books at home, so I don't always think about that. But I definitely when I'm researching, I use their books there whenever. I want a quiet space to read. I pop over there every once in a while, and it's a place where anybody can walk in. Library card allows you to take books home, but anybody can walk in and read and use their facilities. So the libraries and bookstores here in town, I would love for them to get as much traffic as possible.
Yeah, and take your kids too, right?
Yeah, and that's absolutely, they are very kid friendly.
Ricky, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time, and I appreciate everything.
All right, that concludes the episode. Thanks to Ricky for the interview. Thank you to the Amarillo Art Institute and SKP Creative for supporting the podcast, and to Broderick Adams for editing every week. And thank you for listening. This has been episode 448 of Hey Amarillo. I'm your host, Skylar Gallup, and we hope you'll come back next week.